friends. It is so good to be back with you on the Listen for Real podcast. I am Jennifer Brown, and I'm here with my friend, and I call her my relationship guru. Did you know guru means, I think it's the one who removes the darkness inside you. Did you know you have that impact on me?
Wow.
I'm here with Staci Bartley, and we are going to have a conversation today about relationships, marriage. It's going to be pretty open. I actually got permission from my husband to talk very candidly on this podcast today. And we are going to discuss the difference of covenant and contract and this holy grail that the culture and many houses of faith put marriage as. It must be long-term, right? It must be 50 years, you stay married no matter what. And that's the holy grail of everything. That's what's the goal. And I have come to realize, only because I met Staci, who is a relationship mediator and expert on so many things, all things relating and love, and how we either come together or even separate. And she's just really been a help to me. So with that, I want to introduce Staci and just tell them a little bit of who you are really quick. And then we'll get started and kind of talk about the nitty gritty stuff.
Yes. It's so wonderful to be here. And I'm just a regular human being, like all of us on a human journey. And because of my human journey as it relates to relationships, decided about 25 years ago that I needed to dig in and figure some things out about myself, but never imagined that I would be doing the work that I do today. I was just kind of trying to figure some things out for myself, heal my own heart, etc. And it was through that process that finally I found my place, as we do, right? There's a wonderful quote that says, the day that you realize why you were born is just as important as the day you were born. And that was a wonderful day for me. That was really a wonderful day where all of a sudden my past started to make sense in my future, which is Jeff Goins' version of You Found Your Destiny. Specifically, I'm an integrated therapist. I'm a divorce mediator. Those are the credentials or titles that give me the license to do what it is I do. But I just genuinely love to share my journey in hopes that it will pave the way and shed some light on those that are coming behind me that maybe struggled or are struggling with the same things that I struggle with. And I've uncovered a lot of wonderful things, as well as tried to develop some simple frameworks and ways to talk about this process that seems so nebulous and mysterious and heartbreaking and heart-throbbing at times.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that work will continue until I die, and I'll pass the baton to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the ways I came to know you through your brother-in-law, among other things. But last year, I think it was, or maybe 2 years ago, for those who don't know, I'm in my second marriage. And my husband and I were just hitting a rough patch, a lot of nitpicking and just stuff back and forth. And I said, okay, this is not acceptable to me. I am always that person. And this is what drove my first husband crazy, was if something's wrong, we've got to fix it. I am a complete fixer. And truly, I am one of those people that I want to live big. I want to live full, robust life and love. And so it's not tolerable to me to have a mediocre marriage. And so Mark and I hit a rough patch, as all of us do. And so I started to talk with you and join some of your couple sessions. Mark did too. It was really, really helpful. And, but the biggest thing that you've talked about, that this is the thing where we differed, and I now have a new awareness. And my whole point of this podcast and the work I do is that we want to get out of that echo chamber. We have these mindsets. We have these set ideas of how things should be or how they should go. And it's based upon upbringing, culture, you name it. And then it's reinforced by the institutions or the people you hang out with, et cetera, et cetera. And you never really call into question the decisions you're making or the things you think. And I've been really deliberate in the last few years to try and question, wait a minute, why do I do that? Or why did I make this decision? And so that's where hearing you talk about a lease option. Okay. I've ever heard of a lease option is like your car. And that when you're done with it, you move on and you leave and you go get a different car. And I thought, ooh, that seems awfully callous and cold to look at husbands that way. But all right. But you talk more about that for a second, because right, it's not like that.
Oh, for sure. Well, and I have to share a little background story there so that it kind of all makes sense. You're right. I knew of a lease option for a car, as well as like if you were going to lease option a house. And in the throes of me doing what I had stumbled upon doing this relationship work, I myself still struggled with a fair bit of commitment phobia. Yeah. So let me just disclose that. Like, I'm not a person by any stretch of the means that has done this relationship journey flawlessly according to the narrative. In fact, quite the contrary, my friends. In fact, my close friends and family all go, that girl's teaching relationships? Oh my gosh. Jimmy, come on over here. You got to check this out. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It will hit on why I'm the opposite of commitment phobia, because I think everything should be a commitment, but go ahead.
Yes. So here I am. My husband now, Tom, and I are in the throes of our relationship growing and taking on veracity. And I'm a bit in a pickle because I had already disclosed as we had come together, no marriage, my friend. I have all the kids I need. 6 at the time is plenty for me. And I have no reason to get married ever again. In fact, I had been successful at swearing it off for like 15 years to this point.
Oh my gosh. And note to self. So marriage, and you said I have all the kids I need, as if marriage is a vehicle for children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good
note
catch there.
Yes, good catch. Go ahead.
So I knew the conversation was coming. Like, what are we? What are we going to do? We're going to merge our lives. We were to that place in our relationship. And because of the work that I am aware of and I do, I knew that a relationship is either growing or it's sliding backwards. Yeah. There is no way you just hold the pause button and go, okay, we're good now. This is going to be great. We're going to just live happily ever after. Okay, this really works for me. And so I thought, well, here I am. Okay, what am I going to do? So we're in the throes in the middle of the night, literally. And I remember sitting in a bucket in the basement of my house. Like, I mean, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Going, oh, here it comes. Here it comes. And that question gets asked. So what are we, Stace? What are we going to do from this point forward? And I said, to break the tension, how about a lease option contract for love? Like, that's all I can do. That's it. That's all I can do that.
The lease option contract for love.
That was where it all came. And he started to laugh. Like, thank goodness. Whew, I dodged a bullet. Yeah. And then it flipped on me and he said, Stace, that's a really great idea. Actually, I think you should put one together. It didn't get me out of anything.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? Okay, I can do this. And so I dug in and pulled out everything that I could think of that would help have the conversations that we typically stumble over when we're committing to be a significant someone to someone else. Yeah. And I created it and we started to play around with it. And I decided 30 days was long enough. So at 30 days, the idea is I could come back to the table and we didn't have to worry about who was going to say this doesn't work for me, because it was going to be a predetermined agreement that we get to come and have this conversation and how is it working for everybody? And if not, no harm, no foul. I'm going to hug and kiss you and love you and say goodbye.
Oh my gosh.
And so it gave us all the permission and the freedom in the whole wide world, which is what I needed to explore. What is this for me? And does this work for me? And can I show up in a way that works for you? Yeah. And not only that, it helped us to really start disclosing what was important and valuable to us in this next round of our relationship. Like, what did we want it to look like? So it put us front and center in this idea and possibility of creating our future instead of abiding by anything that was predetermined or given to us from our past.
Yes.
We had enough experience at that point in time to know that we had failed and failed and failed again at trying to fulfill those check boxes that had been given to us. Yeah. And I in particular was very wounded by that. Like, I had just had to throw the whole thing out and go, can't do it. Not for me. Maybe I'm rogue. Maybe I'm rebellious. Maybe I'm a whole lot of other things, but I've tried and tried and tried until my hands and knees are bloody and I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so in 30 days, it was wonderful. Like the evaluation process turned out to be one of the most incredible things we had ever done in our relationship.
Oh my gosh. Tell me, like, what do you mean? Give me an example.
So we took our little contract, right? And each of us had kind of made a list of everything that we had wanted. And through
in the relationship,
from the emotional standpoint of view, we weren't talking about like buy a house
and houses. And,
yeah. It was just, what do you need to feel safe, secure, stable, and loved?
Okay.
Right. Like, what is that for you? Because you start to realize, and when I say I love you, or I just need to feel loved by you, that could mean 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people. And so as we started to kind of dig down on, well, how do you feel loved? What is it that floats your boat, makes your heart pitter patter a little?
Right.
So it caused us to dig within ourselves and say, actually, these words and this physical gesture and this experience in totality really makes my heart sing.
Yes.
And we got really good at teaching each other. We started to do an evaluation every week about, okay, so how am I doing?
Every week?
Yeah. For the 30 days, we decided we were going to evaluate it every week.
I did not know that.
And we turned it into a little date. So we would go get our little favorite bottle of bubbly or wine or coffee.
Fun.
And we would go to intentionally a very beautiful place. And we would pull out our little journals that had all of our current workings, right, in our contract. And we would go through them line item by line item. And I would say, okay, here's what my needs were. And Tom would say, okay, so tell me how I'm doing.
Oh my gosh.
And I would say, oh, I love it when this, but let's try this other thing. And this is how
far into your relationship were you when this was all occurring?
We were probably about 8 or 9 months in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's pretty new.
Yeah, it was. Okay. Got it.
And that's what was so.
Because I'm picturing the 10-year marriage person, or for me, a 4 or 3-year marriage. Wow. That was like.
Yeah, it was. And it would make your armpits sweaty and your stomach flip over
right now.
And you're like, okay, here we go. And then, the roles, the tables turn. And I say, okay, Tom, you wanted to feel like you had the permission and space to say what was really on your mind. I mean, how am I doing with that? Tell me, give me some super tips. And he would say, well, I don't like it when I'm saying something and you look away. Could you just look me in the eyes so that I know you're here with me, right? And so we discovered so many little nuances about it. So once the 30 days had expired, we had the option to renew. And I was so excited to renew. Like, this is the funnest thing ever. And I noticed all of a sudden in a moment, like, well, where did all that commitment phobia go?
Right.
Where did it go? What happened? I thought you were the girl that was afraid of commitment. And now you're saying, okay, instead of 30, let's do 90. I'm ready. Let's go big guns,
Yeah.
And so we re-upped for 90 days. And at the end of 90 days, in the spirit of full disclosure, I realized it wasn't commitment I was afraid of at all.
Oh my God.
It was actually navigating the inevitable ups and downs and changes of life that terrified me.
Oh, wow.
And so if we could do that, like if we could talk about what's working and not working in real time, there was nothing to be afraid of anymore.
I know it. Oh my goodness. So here's what I've learned about myself over the last few years. And some of this, but it's worthy of repeating, because I think there are many people who are like me. My whole thing was that relationship was all a means to creating the covenant, the long-term marriage that is legacy for your children and is smiled upon by the culture, by my faith, by my family. I mean, that's the thing we celebrate, right? My daughter just had a wedding a few months back, and they do the thing where all the married couples come out and dance, and then they start to remove you away after how many years, and finally, who's left on the dance floor, but the couple that's been married 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. And so to me, that's what you do. That's the gift you give your kids. It's about longevity, and it's about staying together no matter what. But the problem with that is, and I don't say this for every single person who's ever been in a long-term marriage, that they aren't having happy, fulfilling, wonderful relationships. But many, I think, go, oh, I'm here for life. So, I can phone it in. I can do whatever. I mean, there's no out. There's no option to leave. So we just do what we do, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And there is never this back and forth conversation, this in real time check-in habit that develops because you don't get an out. And that was the mindset I was in both my first marriage and in my second, to a degree, is the key to everything is having a long-term marriage. And then do you show up? Do you behave in the same way and care and love, or honestly share it, knowing, oh, the lease could be up in a month? I think we all would behave and love differently and be a lot more intentional and deliberate. At least I would be, if I knew, oh, it could be up next month, could be up next year. And one of the things I realized, and I learned this year and shared this with my husband. So to all of you who are hearing me share very vulnerably about my own marriage, don't stress it. He's given me permission to talk about this because we're real here, right? We're real and we're authentic, and there is nothing to be gained by me keeping things secret. And he and I are in constant conversation about this, but I realized that I felt so much guilt over my first divorce. We were married 20 years. And I felt so much guilt about it. That I disappointed the people and around me, my family, my kids, obviously, and even those around me who surrounded me because we shared the same faith. And in that faith, it's like, you don't divorce, you stay married, right? I also felt so much guilt, I realize now, over my kids being saddled with that legacy of divorce. And so I took time off. We were divorced. I knew I wasn't making good decisions if I was going to date too soon. I saw where that was going to go, and it wasn't positive. I wasn't making quality decisions. As my best friend says, she goes, Jen, you're like a starving dog lapping up crumbs. You need to not date. Well, that created just a visual, right?
Well, and there is such a thing as love starved.
Oh.
I mean, that is a thing.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, yes, we are so desperate for love. I mean, it's such a human need that when it goes unmet, we will lap up crumbs. We will do all kinds of things to get it met. And who's to say that's a bad thing? If you're really starving, if I was really starving, I would hope that all of us would go to the garbage can and pick out our best option, right? Because it's going to buy you some time to figure it out later. Yeah. And sometimes we forget about that. We're so in the finger pointing and judgment of the moment that we don't realize, actually, given all my options, it's probably best for me to hang around for a minute. So let me get my need met here and now because it's critical. And then that's going to give me the time that I need to maybe figure some things out and improve and get better.
Okay. But even as I hear you say that, I kind of freak out and go, wait a minute, get my need met. Are you talking like sexually, or are you talking about just for companionship? Because here, anyone who knows me and has heard my story about the face licker. Remember the story? Did I ever tell you about the story about the face licker?
I think you did.
Bottom line is, it was a date with somebody who ended up being a weirdo. I can't believe I'm telling this on this. But the bottom line is, it wasn't a quality decision. I'm not sure what need it was going to meet. It was an immediate abort on this relationship and where this could go. Like, what am I doing on this date? And this guy is not for me at all. But he thought he was the king. Anywho, and no, I didn't have sex with him. So can I please just make that clear right now?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm making that sound. But because I freak out about that, because my whole framework was, you don't have sex before marriage. Even if you're 45 and divorced, you wouldn't do that. No. Because that would ruin your potential for a good marriage, because that's what I thought and believed and was taught in some circumstances. Mm-hmm. And so then I didn't date at all because I thought, oh, I'm going totally unbridled here and I can't trust myself. So what would have been wise for someone like me, instead of going, I've got to hurry up and find that I'm going to take this big break. I'm not going to date at all. And then when it is time, like I've done my growing, I'm going to hurry up and find that husband and get married so I can hurry up and get a marriage going online. So it's one of longevity and the years can start clicking away so that I can restore my kids' faith in marriage. And let me be clear. My kids did not ask for this. It's not like they were going, Mom, please get remarried. That wasn't. This was just something that I've only understood very recently in my head was, oh, that's why I get married. And then I meet a wonderful man and he checks enough boxes that I go, oh, there it is, done. And I don't think anything through or ask the kind of questions one would in a lease option to buy type situation. I didn't ask any of those. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh, we're enough in alignment. Here we go. And we decided we were getting married. We were pretty sure about it before we even met.
Wow. So I think there's so many places we could go with what you just shared, but here's the thing I need to point out right now, if I may. We don't realize that when I say the emotional need, it's the emotional piece that I'm talking about. And we immediately go to the physical demonstration of what that might be, right? So I'm physically having sex, or we're making out in the back seat, or I'm acting like a ridiculous idiot. When I talk about the need, it's the emotional need for connection.
Yeah.
And there is, not to get too like psychobabble on you, but I think it is important for us when we're talking about relationships to realize a relationship is an emotional experience that we try and live out through a physical lens.
Okay, wait, say that again because my brain didn't catch it right away.
The emotional experience is relationship. It's that feeling I get when I'm with somebody that gets me or is holding me. And it's known in the worlds of psychology that I need comfort. I think about like a brand new newborn baby that I nurture and I cuddle and I soothe, right? And I'm giving that to them. And the exchange of that, at some point in time, with enough of that, they're going to be able to do that on their own, self-soothe, comfort themselves, right? And maybe even give that to somebody else. But the thing that's fascinating is regardless of your age, we all need a well that we go back to get that.
Yeah.
Before we can give it to ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see? So it's the emotional need that gets us to connect or share with somebody when we're love starved and we find ourselves showing up and doing the physical part of meeting an emotional need, which is tell me I'm beautiful, tell me I'm going to be okay, tell me I got this, tell me you want me, right? That's an emotional need that's being satisfied through what we could judge later as, oh, that's crazy, that's outlandish, that's ridiculous, that's really what I'm after. And I can run dry there. I can run dry with giving that to myself if I don't have it being given to me. And so it's really important for us to understand there's a give and receive here that I think we forget about the experiences of relationship. We need to give, yes. And most of us give and give and give and give and give and then get dry and we're running on fumes. And so we give and give and give and give some more. And then we beat ourselves up because we can't, do it right, get it right, be right. And not realize we're out of gas. We are totally out of emotional gas. And so something like that, as you would say, the crumbs would be very attractive, because that's going to help me refuel a little bit so that I can carry on.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's take a quick break and then we're coming back. Okay, welcome back. I wonder what everybody's thoughts are about what we're talking about. Y'all, we're on Instagram. If you feel like you want to make a comment or say, oh, I resonate with that, or I disagree vehemently with what you're saying, maybe you have a stuck point. Feel free to reach out to us. I'm on Instagram. It's Being Real Jen. It's in the show notes as well, but it's Being Real Jen. And Staci's is Staci Bartley, but she is Staci Bartley. And I think it's Staci Bartley Relationship Expert. Yeah. So if you look her up, definitely you'll see it in the show notes as well. But I want to make sure, let's talk about your book because Staci has a new book. What's it called? Marriage
Yeah, marriage is dead. It's
dead.
actually feeling like marriage is dead.
Yeah.
How to truly create love for a lifetime. And I really want to highlight here, this is not a conversation about whether we marry or not marry. I am not anti-marriage by any stretch
Oh
of
my
the
gosh, same.
Just I am married. I have been married 10 years in spite of
and
my
you've been married
commitment
before.
phobia. Yeah.
As have I.
Like twice.
We like marriage a lot to the point we both have done it multiple times.
Yes. Which the conversation in the book is exploring where marriage comes from, which is important to start dispelling some of the myths and expectations that we have around it. And it's also a conversation about how to get what it is we want out of it without relying on marriage itself. Because the reality is a marriage isn't going to give a relationship anything that it doesn't already have.
Mm-hmm.
That's important for us to realize, because oftentimes we have been given the story that if we get it right or do it right, that marriage is going to be that guarantee of longevity. It's going to be that guarantee that I'm a good person and I'm doing this correctly. Just like you had said earlier, it's a legacy that I'm going to hand down to my kids.
Yeah.
And oftentimes too, especially with the younger kids, I see them rushing to get married in hopes that that's going to be the thing that makes it all worth it, right? That secures that guarantee that they're looking for. And it also, interestingly enough, is a place where it's supposed to quiet all of our fear and insecurity, right? Like if I find my person and I get married, like all of that fear and insecurity I experience about not being enough and not being loved and doing it right or not getting it right, I've done it right, especially if I check all the boxes according to my faith.
Yeah.
I should be good to go.
Yeah.
And then it happens. And after the wedding, we start to realize, man, not only did it not cure any of my fears and insecurities, it actually put the darn things on steroid. Now I'm afraid and concerned about all kinds of things that hadn't even entered my thought process or my emotional experience in this, right?
Yeah.
Especially if we start to have challenges, sexually, intimately, describing or exposing things that are not working for me. That's where we kind of all get hung up, right? It's like, oh, I don't really like that. I didn't think that was going to bother me, but it's starting to really bother me now.
Yeah.
But I don't want to talk about it because then I'm going to be the problem. I'm going to rock the boat. I'm going to sacrifice my longevity. It's going to all tip upside down. So what do we love to do instead as human beings when we're really doing our best? Is we wait and we sit on it and we just hope that it's going to somehow take care of itself.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. That is the moment where we are headed to a place we do not want to go. It's actually breaking down our relationships, not helping them thrive.
And for people pleasers, like this is people pleaser land right here.
It is. And I still have to be mindful of people pleasing. Like
every day.
And any of us who have been taught that, and that's a huge percentage of us as human beings, regardless of our social culture.
Yeah.
We have been taught to pretzel ourselves into a box so that we can be loved and we can be accepted and we can be good enough and we can get it right.
Yeah.
So it's a place where we are very familiar about going, which is AKA people pleasing. And there's so many of us who have developed and become very good at that to our own demise. And what does that look like? Depression, anxiety, our addictions all come from this place.
Totally.
So depression in my world and in my work and in the world that relationships is depressed expression.
Yeah.
Of you, who you are, who you can be.
Yep.
Right. What's working for you and what's not working for you. If we can't talk about those things, then there's no evolution that can happen. It's going to be as good as it ever was on your wedding day, which is the experience so many of us have, right?
Right.
It was great. And we're always trying to get back to that, right? I mean, how do we get back to the best days of our relationship? I can't tell you how many times that very comment or statement is made to me. How do we get back? Well, you can't get back. Number one, that's impossible. But what we can do is learn how to go forward. But it's going to take everybody showing up and telling the truth, which is the part that terrifies us. Like, what?
It's true.
Anywhere.
And it feels selfish. So I was taught for so long that if you just put yourself to the side and be selfless and you make sure you're meeting your husband's needs, and he will do the same. He will put his ego and self aside and he will meet your needs. Well, then everyone's happy. Well, there's a lot riding on that. And I remember you saying it is inherently cruel and unkind to not state and ask for what you need in a relationship, because you're expecting them to guess and intuit it and then go ahead and be that person who goes, okay, I'm going to put myself aside. I'm going to meet all her needs. I'm going to guess what they are. I might ask a few things, but half the time, I mean, that's a fool's errand, right?
Well, and the reason why that's a fool's errand is because your partner doesn't have access to your emotional experience. That's an inside job. So they don't even have the information to make that kind of choice and decision. I mean, how in the world were they ever to know unless you are to disclose it and share with them? And that's why it's so cruel, because I don't know of a couple that steps to the altar to say, I do, let's go forward and make this as good and long lasting as possible, where then we look each other in the eye and go, I'm really going to screw you over. I mean, it doesn't happen, right? So it's so precious that we are all coming to that place with the best of intents. We want to do a good job. We want this to go well.
Yes.
And yet we are not given, nor do we have access to the information that would make that even remotely possible.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Because you won't know unless I disclose it. And if I can't disclose it, which is terrifying and selfish and shameful and all of those other things we've been taught, then how in the world are we ever going to create success?
Okay. And so off of that, it just came to mind is the fact that, and this was something Mark and I have been talking about very recently, is he said, Jen, I don't think you know what you want or need. You think you do, but then when you try to articulate it, not clear. It's not clear at all. He's right. I don't know if I've ever really taken the time to truly look and go, well, what do I truly want or need or desire in this life or in this relationship? And so I just go ahead and check the box or complete the picture. And I mean, same with my first husband. I'm telling you, marrying both my first husband and my second, I was like, I'm in love with this person. We are going to make the best life. I mean, we all do that. But how many of us don't even know what we truly want? We're just doing what's expected of us or checking a box and thinking, oh, well, that's where it's all going to come together.
Well, you know what? We don't realize that in and of itself is a journey. That learning and discovering yourself is a place where we have to go and invest time. Just like if I really wanted to get to know you and you and I were going to become fast friends, we would have to spend the time, effort, and energy to create that.
Yes.
And yourself, that relationship with yourself is no different. If you don't spend any time exploring what it is you want, what works for you and what doesn't, which by the way, we're not taught to do. That's not even an outlet or an avenue that we're given.
Yeah.
What we're taught is how to please others and how to make somebody else happy. And so we're very good at that. I just want to highlight, we have the capacity, right? But we've just not developed the ability because we're constantly thinking about how to please somebody else, which is very different than understanding and knowing myself. And both require time and practice. And so you are not alone by any stretch. I really want the listener to hear that. Most of us don't know what we want because we don't spend enough time there examining it or being with it. And it's going to take practice because we learn and discover life and ourselves through contrast. Like we try something and go, oh, that didn't work. That's not what I want. I'm pretty clear now. But until I try and experience it, I really don't know.
Wow. We see, and that's the thing too. We really forbid that contrast. Like you wouldn't want to make a mistake. You don't go do this. You only do this and you go down this path because this is the prescribed, what's the words I want? Prescribed
place of this is going to be successful.
Yeah. And so you would never want to go to this place of contrast because that's bad somehow or wrong. And so you are never given that space to recognize for yourself where you fall and what you're looking for. I don't feel like it's even hard for me to articulate it right now. You know what I mean?
Well, let's go back and if I can, I'll share with you the narrative that I was given as a kid.
Okay.
And this is, out of the sippy cup, right? I am taught that, hey, this is how this is going to go. If you're living according to your faith and follow the Holy Ghost, then you are going to have a great life. Like things are going to be so amazing and you can do anything you want to.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as you stay within these guidelines.
Yep.
And so I don't have any reason to think that that prescription I'm being given isn't absolutely 100% fail proof, right?
Totally.
And so that's where most of us start the journey of learning about ourselves. And so when somebody says to me, Stace, that's not okay for you to say that. I'm thinking, but I feel that way. Well, don't talk about it. You start to learn, okay, wait a minute. There's a distinctive difference here in the contrast. I can feel it, but I shouldn't say so. And that's the minute we start to practice that, right? It's about pleasing somebody else and making sure that you're going according to the narrative or the prescription. And so if I'm living a good life and I'm being a good person, I'm going to find a wonderful return missionary who is going to sweep me off my feet. And we are predestined in the before life that we are going to meet, fall madly in love. We are going to get married in the temple. And then we are going to live happily ever after raising our kids. And that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. It all sounds good. And I remember as a 14-year-old girl thinking I had this experience, ironically, with my now husband, Tom.
I know, that's so
35
crazy.
years, right?
Wait, when you said that earlier, I was like, wait, Tom?
Yeah. So that's a serendipitous thing, because if it wasn't for this moment that happened when I was a 14-year-old girl, I probably would have never married again. I'm not even quite sure. I mean, it's hard to say how it would go, but I probably would still be that commitment phobic, hell bent on being the independent woman. I'm not ever going to give my heart away kind of girl.
Yeah.
If I hadn't had that very serendipitous moment when I was 14 years old,
crazy,
knowing nothing about relationships, nothing about life. In fact, I thought I had it in a bag. Like, this is going to be so easy. I mean, I got my prescription. I got the Holy Ghost. I'm a good girl. I know I'm knocking this out of the park. And I just saw a guy who like took my breath away. So it's happening just like they told me it was going to.
Oh my gosh.
And not knowing anything about it. I'm 14. He's 21. I mean, of course, he doesn't want anything to do with me. I tell you what, I was stalking him like a banshee at that wedding.
Gosh.
Right. This is my sister's wedding. And I'm going,
love is in the air.
Love is in the air. Well, 3 years later, just to fast forward, I was pregnant by my high school sweetheart, wasn't Tom, and forced to get married, essentially. I was given some really great options. But at this point in time, that's where I had deviated from the box checking. And so the guilt and shame that I felt for doing that was horrific.
Okay.
Like, I watched my mom fall apart and my family fall apart, and I felt completely responsible for that. Like, and that was the reason I made up in my head that I was miserable. My marriage didn't work. Of course, I'm 17. He's 19. We have a beautiful baby girl. And at 19, go back to school, go back to college, kind of try and put your wheels on. And according to this narrative, what I needed was a person to fulfill that narrative. Put man here.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I'm on a hunt.
Man here. Wow.
I'm on a hunt because I've got to turn this around. I got to get it right.
Yeah. I so relate.
Okay, well, that's probably not my best option, honestly.
Well, and that's unfair to the man. I mean, so not to interrupt you, but I just want to play off this for a second. That's exactly it. Is I had an image of what I was supposed to be doing and the life I was supposed to creating. I was in love with this idea of marriage and family. And then it's like the poor guy. I'll never forget when I was dating before I met my first husband. There was one guy that I went on dates with, and I remember I was like, "Oh, I love you." And he's like, "Jen, you are nesting and I am not."
That's great.
I was like, "Oh, okay." And I immediately went, well, I guess he's not the one. And I was hellbent. I'm 4 weeks later, found the guy I did marry and my first husband. And because I was in mode to fulfill the picture as opposed to, not to say I didn't love my husband. You get my point, but I'm now understanding this at age 50, finally, that I was in love with the idea, the picture, the family, the big, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And it makes us feel like, okay, I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
And so my second husband was, he was from the same faith. And he too wanted to get his life back on track. And he was willing to accept my baby girl, which is very outlandish at that point in time in the 80s.
Yeah.
With my background. And I thought, sweet spot. Here we go.
Yep.
Only to find myself checking all the boxes and being more miserable than ever. Now, how do you start to explain that one? now wait a minute. I was going to put this whole thing, I'm doing it by the book. I am doing it so perfect.
Yeah.
I'm doing everything I was told to do, and I'm so unhappy. And looking back, I didn't see this at the time, but my poor husband at the time, because of my perfectionism and it having to be just so, which in my particular faith is pretty rigid. Okay. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of doing and expectation and requirement necessary to check all the boxes. There was no room for breathing and permission and don't tell me you don't want to do it. And so I drove this poor soul to doing all manner of dysfunction coping wise. We're talking drinking, we're talking escaping, we're talking, right? And I couldn't figure it out because I was just this sweet little wife that was trying to make do a perfect
marriage, right?
And it was like, hey, I thought we were in this together.
Yeah.
Right? I thought you're supposed to play your part. And so not having any skills or understanding about what's going on, I'm sure I was not the kindest, nicest, sweetest, most understanding person in the whole wide world. In fact, I was probably very mean and very harsh.
Oh my gosh, I was the same way. My poor first husband. Dear God.
Yeah. I was like, you better pull it together because you know what? It wasn't just time we were married. It was for all eternity. And I don't know how long that is, but it's a really long damn time. And so you better pull your shit together.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot riding on this.
Yeah.
So I remember my first husband, he was like, oh my God, this is not worth the pressure. It should not have to be this hard.
Oh, that poor thing. He didn't even want to say anything. And if he did, it was a fight. It was a blowout, which I'd go, see, pull your shit together.
Yeah.
Right. And so he would just go missing. Yeah, that was his MO. He would he got an office, like 25 miles from our house and put up a whole little like bed and cot and that kind of thing. Oh, yes, I know. And
note to self, if your husband puts a cot in his office. Okay. Fun fact. My husband put an office down in our basement and there is a cot down there. Oh, we'll have to talk about that.
There's your sign. It's kind of like a Jeff Foxworthy thing, right? And there's your sign. Like,
oh my gosh.
And so as you start to like just reel out of control. Everybody does, right? And the not being able to adhere to the narrative almost ensures you're going to become more controlling, more monopolizing. As you're showing up as a version of yourself that you don't want to be, this is not congruent with me, who I am. I'm a really easygoing person.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, I'm exhausted from trying to keep this whole thing on the rails. Right. And so thankfully he said, hey, I think we need some help, because if he had not done that, I would have never gone there.
Yeah.
I thank him for blowing up my entire paradigm about how this is supposed to go. He gets credit for every bit of it, because if he hadn't kept blowing up my little paradigm in regards to how this is supposed to go, I wouldn't be sitting here with you now. I would still be trying to do that narrative.
Thank you for saying that, because that's the whole point of conversations like this is we get set in our little paradigm. We get set and think our perspective is the only perspective. And then it takes sometimes another person rocking that perspective to realize, and it opens so many doors and windows that are critical.
So and that's why we need each other. Come to find out, that's why we need each other.
Yeah.
It's because I only know my paradigm and my perspective. But if we share, then it doesn't mean I have to agree with you, but it will expand the way I think of it.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. Like this for you who are right now, you're listening to this going, you know what? Screw you people. I'm happily married. I've been married for 30 years. Awesome. That this isn't about like anti-marriage. It's just about, is there a new perspective to make all of our relationships better? I don't care if you're in some straight marriage and you've been married for 40 years, you're in a gay marriage and you've been married for 60 days. It just doesn't matter. Or if you're just in a relationship and you're dating someone, that's the whole point, is there's something to be gained for all of us, right?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. That's, and we learn so much from each other if we can be curious and ask the questions and listen deeply and just not dig in our heels. Because I was that person a number of years ago. If you weren't getting married and committing, and then come hell or high water, you stay married. And if you have a problem, go get your counseling. which I still feel is terribly important. I was judgmental all over the place.
Me too.
I'm embarrassed by my judgment.
Well, me too. And I used to go door to door and proselyte that.
Oh my gosh.
This, I knew the way. And,
oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Girl.
If I could take back some of those conversations, right?
I know.
Because I didn't have a clue, and I was trying to figure it out. And it was kind of like the more that paradigm got challenged, or that my own, paradigm started to break apart, the more I wanted to push that agenda, the more to reassure myself that I was doing it right.
Whoa.
So that's important for us to see that sometimes if we are becoming more and more judgmental to ourselves, to our partners, to this narrative that we're trying to live, right? It sometimes is very often because it's breaking down for you, and we need to defend it. Just like we would defend a perspective. We're defending a way of life. We're defending, right, all of these things that we have been taught, instead of looking at them and going, now, wait a minute, how does this work? And how does this not work? Now, unfortunately, there was a moment, and I think you were much more eloquent in doing this than I was, when you came out of your first marriage. I'm just going to take a wild gander, but I'm pretty sure, because after checking all the boxes and trying to do everything I could possibly do and exhausting myself and being that controlling, perfect person, I swung really hard to the other side. And it was like, throw it all out. I'm done. Okay. Obviously that didn't work. And so, imagine this big arm, I don't know if you're familiar with duck pin bowling, but duck pin bowling pulls up all the good memories and then just wipes everything else clean. Everything got tossed in the trash at that point in time. And then I became Hell on Wheels, quite honestly. It was like, oh, I'm doing it my way. And I became a byproduct of exactly what it is that I felt destroyed my marriage. Right. And so I would do all manner of, this is going to be on my terms. The good news is it helped me find my voice. That's what I got out of it. But I'm not proud of the fact that I hurt a lot of people in this, drag people home, tell them what they're going to do, and then throw them out like yesterday's trash. That was me acting out my hurt, my disappointment, my rage, my anger. Right. And that's the narrative that I was living out. So that's where I became that, I'm an independent woman, right? I remember my favorite songs, even they're starting to flash in my mind, like, and I'd crank them up on my radio, man. I had this figured out. Totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And that was pretty much the way it rolled for about 15 years. I became very independent and just really started to dig in and do my own work and learning. And that was really where I started to give myself that permission to explore me. Yeah. Up to that point in time, there was no permission to do that. It was all about pleasing or getting it right or checking the boxes, those kinds of things.
Me was last for sure. And that I still struggle with. And this is something I want to say over and over. It is not a bad thing to figure out you, to explore you, to get a sense of who you are. And I don't think most of us, well, there's a lot of us who don't take the time to do that, to really listen in and pay attention. I thought that was self-indulgent, selfish, all manner of inappropriate. I don't know where I got this, but it, and that didn't serve anybody. Certainly didn't serve me. That didn't serve the people I love. Not at all. And would I want that for my kids in the choices they make in life, whether they choose to marry or not, whether in the choices they make in life, it's that whole, you got to get a sense of who you are, know your soul. And then once you do, I think it's Glennon Doyle that says something like, I will never again stay in a relationship, an institution, anything that causes me to betray my own soul ever again.
It's causing me to think of one that says it's better to be in with yourself and out with everyone else than in with everyone else and out with yourself.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because of what we were taught, right? And this goes back historically to, the 1600s, to be honest with you, where women became as one with a man and they weren't allowed to own anything or govern their children, those kinds of things. And that's where we started to learn how important it was for our survival to please our person, right? Yeah. Because we were as one now. Yep. And so that marches on. And what I've discovered with the story that we're given, the narrative that we're given, is until we stop and look at the narrative, we really don't understand how we fit into it. nor do we understand ourselves, nor do we get clear on the expectations that we have. We're striving for something, but we have no idea where we're going.
Mm.
And what I mean by this is, as I started to examine my own narrative, I recognized and realized that if I look back to my mom, well, her and my dad were making out in the backseat of the car. And if I go back another generation, my grandmother, my grandfather and her, you start to see and hear all these stories, right? Where you go, hey, wait a minute. Nobody's living that narrative, right?
Yeah.
Hold on. And because they had challenges in their relationship, they made it up that it was because they didn't adhere to the narrative, which intensified their pressure of passing it down.
Oh my goodness.
And so this narrative gets more and more intense as we pass it down from generation to generation to generation, thinking that that's what's going to be the good thing to save our children, that they're going to be successful with love if they could just adhere to the story, but nobody's adhering to the story because the story is unrealistic according to human behavior. Yeah. It's not possible for us to be one way for the rest of our lives or not change or grow. That relationship is going to change and grow. There's so many parts and pieces that are going to be different as life unfolds. In that contrast we talked about earlier, that nobody's successful in living the story. Yeah. But we intensify passing it down.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh my gosh. We could record countless episodes.
Let's do it.
Oh my gosh. We're going to. Okay. Really fast. Talk about Love Shack. You guys, this is the greatest thing ever.
Oh, I love Love Shack. It's almost a year old now. It's just my brand new little baby. And it airs live on KKNW 1150 out of Seattle.
Whoa, you just rattled that right off.
I know. And then it's rebroadcast on a different radio station. And then it's recorded, of course, is where you can find any of the shows on podcast directories. So it's a show that we do. We talk about relationships and we bring in incredible guests. And we love to uncover the mysteries that absolutely affects our lives and our relationships, but that nobody talks about. It's conversations like this, Jen, so I applaud you, that help us get better at love and relationships. We don't even realize it's something I get good at with practice. It's something I should just know.
Right. Where did we get that idea that we would intuitively know all this? I suppose there's a few amazing human beings who intuitively love well, but it's a learned thing. Mm-hmm. It is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Love Shack is awesome. And you guys, shameless plug. I'll shameless plug you all day long. Oh, and your book's name again is?
Feeling Like Your Marriage is Dead. It'll be out in 2022, beginning of January. So it's all written now. We're just going through the last bits of editing and all kinds of things. So super excited about that. And again, it's not an anti-marriage book. It's a book that uncovers and helps us explore, what is marriage to us? Like, what is that narrative that you notice? And then there's a wonderful place where we go through the history of marriage and where it comes from, so that we can explore where some of these stories and narratives come from with no judgment, but just a self-reflection of, well, how do I feel about all of this now? Right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of wonderful things. I could go on and on about the book. I'm super excited about it. Terrifying. Writing a book is one of the most difficult things I've ever done.
Oh, I believe you. I believe you.
But thank you for letting me talk about it.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? Well, I just know your work. I've benefited from your work and all that you and Tom put together. She works closely with her sweetheart, Tom. And I can't say enough. So thank you. Thank you. We will come back and we will talk more. We will have more episodes because there's just so much to cover here. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. So thank you. Thank you for being here. And guys, thank you for joining in this conversation. It is just wonderful to have everybody here on I picture you guys sitting here right alongside us and sipping I'm sipping my little tea in my Granite City mug. And it's just so nice to be together and have conversations and flush stuff out. It's important that we do it.
So can I say one more thing before we say goodbye?
You can say 5 more things.
Oh, to anybody who's listening and with that cup of tea and here in the room with us, from the bottom of my heart, I want you to know that there is no such thing as a failed relationship. It does not exist. And my relationship journey, if I can do it, you can do it. And every single relationship I have ever been in contributed to who I am now. And if I can just say, that man I saw as a 14-year-old girl ended up being my husband 35 years later. And if it wasn't for that moment as a 14-year-old girl, I would have never stopped dead in my tracks in regards to that paradigm of I'm an independent woman and I can figure this all out on my own. because of that experience, it stopped me dead in my tracks, as life does, as relationships do, as human beings do. They cause us to reevaluate everything I thought I knew. And then it opens up a whole nother chapter of life. And so there's no such thing as failure. It's just that understanding. And then we grow and we become, and then we grow and we become again. Yes. So wherever you are in your relationship journey, it's a great place to be. It's time for us to turn and embrace and love our own love stories. You know, we all love a love story.
Totally.
Let's embrace our own, because it's just as magnificent.
Oh, that's perfect. And no such thing as a failed relationship. Mm. I love that. Thanks, my friend. You're the best.
You're right back.
All right. See y'all soon.
Bye.
The Listen for Real podcast is recorded in Rockland, California, and is edited by Jamie Hill and Christian Oliver. Our theme music is Zero by the amazing Shannon Curtis. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next episode.